This video is about the order checklist. The order checklist functionality was released in early 2024, and there's two parts of it. The first part is the configuration that the administrators have access to, and the second part is using the checklist within a quote in an order. To go to the configuration, that's under Admin, Checklist Config. When you first go to the screen, FCC has preloaded a handful of fields that we think are useful. Of course, all of them are configurable. You can add and delete these at your convenience, but this is sometimes a useful starting point to kind of consider what you would like during each of the four stages of an engagement. The quoting, followed by an order, then when it's been invoiced, and finally after it's been closed out. Now, all of these fields can be customized. You can delete them simply by clicking on the X. You can move them around by dragging the handle. And you can certainly add new ones by clicking on the plus icon. If I click on the plus, I'll get a dialog of the various ways I can create a field. Now, the only required part is the name of the field. And then I can say whether it's required or not. Now, what required means is you must complete this field before you move on to the next stage of the engagement. For example, if this was in the quote section and I said the required is yes, well, then I cannot turn this quote into an order until this field is completed. I'm going to say yes to this one. And then finally, I can say what type of field this is, either small data entry, a yes or no selection, or I can even say a date or a specific user or even a particular attachment. The last one is the display. So by default, if you make no changes, every field you put in is going to be present on every quote within the system. But you can certainly narrow that down in a handful of ways. So you can say that I want this field to only show up for a specific sales group, customer, or if the total exceeds a specific amount. In addition, there's extra admin configurations where you can do it the other way as well. So you could say I want it for all sales groups except these two. Or I want it for all customers except these one or two. To do any of those sort of extra configurations, just contact our support team and we'll walk you through how to do that. So in this case, I'm going to say only for a particular sales group and commercial sales. So in this particular demo environment, I've got 3 different sales groups. So by saying commercial sales, this field will only be shown and accessible on quotes inside the commercial sales group. Here's my new field here. Underneath, I've got an icon that gives me an indication that there's something unique about this field. In this case, it's only displayed for commercial sales. Additional characterizations will also show up down here as well. You can add or remove fields to your heart's content all the way through in all of the 4 different phases. In addition, you can make fields restricted so that only specific people can complete them. And by restricted, you can do it either by a particular user, you could do it by a particular role within the system, or even a special permission that is granted to them. For that type of extra configuration, just reach out to the FCC support team and we'll help you through that. I'm going to tweak a few of these fields so that we can see a handful of different ways that these fields come into play with their restrictions. Now, I've updated our checklist config to include a couple of different conditions in here so that we can see how those come into play once we start jumping into an actual quote. So in this case, under this PM reviewed field, I've said that this is excluded from order types of manufacturer direct. So if I create a quote that is a manufacturer direct versus a traditional or a GSA, that field will not even show up. For those that it does show up, I've included 2 extra access onlys. So in this case, I've done it by a user and by a role. So on a traditional order, this field will be shown, and only the user Mike Ryder or an administrator can complete this field. And this way you can lock down different fields so that only particular users, roles, or rights can complete those fields. All right, now this is the checklist config side. Now let's go see what this looks like when we go into a quote. So here we are inside of a sample quote. This is just a simple demo testing quote, and we'll notice a couple of things that are different. First, we have this progress bar across the top, and it's color-coded to correspond to the different stages of this engagement. Of course, starting with yellow in quote, then going to green in order, blue invoiced, followed by a brown to close. And as you complete the tasks, the progress bar will fill from left to right all the way through to 100%. You can also easily see how many tasks have been completed in that particular phase. In this case, I have completed 0 of 8 tasks. I also have a checklist tab, and that will give me all the details of which I've configured on the previous step. So now when I go inside the checklist, this is the end result of that configuration that we did in the previous example. So now, based on the characteristics of this quote, I have the fields that are available to me. And this is automatically filtered behind the scenes based on your order type, your sales group, the total volume, you name it. Whatever characteristics you put on the admin side, those are all filtered out, and this is the end result. So we can see here I've got a handful of fields, 8 specifically in the quote phase, one of which is restricted access, meaning only Mike Ryder or an administrator can complete this field. The rest of the phases here are not yet editable. Now, for the phase that you're in, you can not only complete the field, but you can also tag who's responsible and if there's a due date, and of course you can add extra notes as well. So I can come in here and say, these are project notes. Now I've got a little icon that lets me indicate that there are comments, and people can go and append to comments as many times as they need to. Now I can go and add a responsible person. So in this case, I'll add myself, and I'll put a due date of, let's say, next week. I'll save those changes. Now, as I hover over the progress bar, it'll tell me the next task and who's responsible and the due date. That also shows up on their public homepage as well, and you can search for it in the quote tracker. Now, as I complete the fields, the progress bar will move over each step of the way. As I pick dates here and continue on throughout the process, now I've got 2 of 8. Now, all of these are optional, except one is listed as required. So what that means is I cannot move past the quote into an order phase until this is complete. So if I try to do that by turning this into an order, I'll get a message that says, oh, I've still got 1 field left to complete before I can progress. Once I do that, though, I'll say yes here. Now I can convert this into an order even without completing the rest of the steps. When I do that, I'll turn this into an order. Now if I go back to my overview, now I've moved on from the order stage now into the order stage, and I have my next series of tasks to complete. And just like the rest of the phases, I can have any of these be required, conditional about when they appear, and also conditional about who can complete these fields. The end result is you can make a checklist that is entirely customizable, not just for your dealership, of course, but for even the subsets within your dealership, either by sales group, client, order type, or any combination thereof. The end result is that you have a highly tailored checklist that really just maps to your business process for that particular engagement. There's lots of customizations you can do inside this order checklist. And if we didn't cover it today, reach out to our help desk team and we'll be happy to walk you through any of them. In addition, we'll be happy to help set up this checklist for you if it's a little bit too daunting to go through the admin configuration side. And with anything, if you have any questions, comments, or need any assistance, feel free to reach out to our help desk team and we'll be happy to assist. Have a great rest of your day.